Good weekend, everybody. Thank you once again for tuning in to Sunday School Bonanza, brought to you by those of us at This Week in Mormons. What is Sunday School Bonanza? If in case you're a first-time listener, a roughly 10-minute overview of a forthcoming gospel doctrine lesson. And this week's lesson is lesson number 9, My Soul Delighteth in the Words of Isaiah, in the Book of Mormon manual, of course. Once again, I am joined by our much venerated, just genius, Bill Doolittle. He's here again.
And glad to be here. And glad to be venerated. This is the only place that happens.
Yeah. So we're going to rock it today. Today, we're getting into the Isaiah chapters today. I think they only dedicate one lesson to Isaiah stuff in the Book of Mormon. So we're mostly in 2 Nephi, 11, 12, 15, 16. That's pretty much it. A lot of stuff here. So the first question, of course, though, Bill, maybe you have an why Isaiah? People ask this all the time, but why does Nephi up and out of nowhere just start verbatim copying down Isaiah chapters into his works?
I think it could be it's sort of, this was the prophet that he knew best, right? That he had the writings of, and it was most recent in his family's history when they were in Jerusalem. And I think the other reason is that Nephi, saw our day. And so he's quoting from Isaiah because a lot of the prophecies are more relevant than the other materials that he has for our time and our day. So he specifically quotes them, and that some of the topics that we get today are going to be reflective of that.
Okay. Well, there we go. And then it says, of course, right here, other reasons why. 1 Nephi 19:23, to more fully persuade them to believe in the Lord. I think we said this before we started recording, that Isaiah is sort of the most Christ-centered prophet of the Old Testament.
Yeah, he's talking more about the Messiah than almost anybody, and in a lot of detail.
And so it's interesting that in what in the end became the Book of Mormon, which clarifies so many teachings about Christ, that one prophet from the Old Testament was singled out. There's no Habakkuk anywhere in the Book of Mormon.
Not a bit.
No. Then over in 2 Nephi 11, to provide another witness of Jesus Christ, and then also to help readers rejoice and to reveal God's judgments.
And it's interesting, just on the Christ point, right before Nephi launches into this full explanation, or the long quotations from Isaiah, he quotes his brother Jacob, who has had a vision of Christ. So seeing the Messiah and prophesying about the Messiah was important just in their family. So that maybe helps Nephi pick up some of these messianic themes in Isaiah.
Huh. Fascinating study. So there are various keys to understanding Isaiah. You may have heard of these. The lesson says only as time permits, but I feel like going over the keys to understanding Isaiah is probably one of the most important things we can do, because if you approach it from with that context, you'll better understand everything in the end. So key number 1 is to liken all scriptures unto us. We talked about this a little bit before, that Isaiah's prophecies deal with events in the latter days. And so it's great to understand that, because clearly as we look for those things, we can see how it applies to us and how Isaiah prophesied of things that still haven't even transpired yet today in 2012. So it's pretty remarkable.
So then the second one, and this is, I think, one of the hardest, is know concerning the manner of prophesying among the Jews. So definitely Isaiah is writing for a Jewish audience, and we have to understand the kind of symbolism he uses, like when he talks about 2 smoking firebrands, and he's really talking about 2 nations that are going to invade Israel. You have to get past a lot of that symbolism in order to access the real prophecy in a way that we can understand. And that means that you really have to dig in, although I don't think it's as forbidding as it needs to be. I mean, we can, as you go symbol by symbol through it, you just take a little time, and then you'll understand what it means. Yeah.
No, I agree, because just work through it. Key number 3 is to know the judgments of God. I'll just read this. Isaiah foresaw how the kingdom of Israel and Judah would suffer because of their wickedness, but he also prophesied that their blessings would be restored when they repented and followed Jesus Christ. Because Isaiah had a great account of what happened to Israel and Judah, and from his prophecies of the future restoration of the house of Israel, we can better understand how God works in our lives and how he blesses nations.
And then key number 4 is know concerning the regions round about Jerusalem. Isaiah is always talking about different places. You'll even hear in the prophecy of the birth of Jesus Christ, he says the people in darkness have seen a great light. And there, it was explained to me once in an Isaiah class that he's referring to the darkened soil of Galilee. That's a darker region, and people called it that a darker region. So the people in darkness have seen a great light. You're not going to know what that means unless you get some understanding of the regions round about Jerusalem. So there you can use your maps, you can use a lot of stuff, but you gotta know the areas because Isaiah is writing for those people.
Yeah, and it even mentions here in the lesson that Isaiah mentions the specific cities the Assyrian army would pass through on their way to Jerusalem. And even that's important if you understand geography, because Assyria, if I'm not mistaken, was located to the northeast of that region. And so it's good to know things like that. You understand better where the Assyrians are coming from and how things played out. The last one, of course, is to be filled with the spirit of prophecy. And I think that's pretty straightforward. But
if you can see it all, then it makes sense, right?
Yeah, clearly. But and I think we can easily say that's just the gift of discernment or being filled with the Spirit as we seek these things. Now, one of the things Isaiah talked about was seeing the latter-day temple, one of my favorite Isaiah prophecies, and the gathering of Israel. And so Isaiah often talked about the temple as the mountain of the Lord. And this, of course, was because oftentimes prophets of old, we see this all the time, where did they go to commune with the Lord?
They go up on the mountain.
They go to the mountain, and it's great because this happened before in the time of Moses. We see during the Transfiguration with even Christ and the apostles. Generally speaking, they go up to a mountain. And it's for some of those reasons, man has often been compelled, I think, to try to build structures and go to great heights, literally, to try to find God because of that. And so today, of course, we talk about the mountains, and it says the temple would be erected, in the for the mountain of the Lord. And of course, how has that happened today? We generally argue that the high altitudes of Utah sort of fulfill that requirement, so to speak. And the temples have been built there, though. I mean, the temple was restored. And that's a great thing. You have the Salt Lake Temple, which is not even the first one to stick around in this dispensation. We had Nauvoo that got burned, and then St. George and Manti and Logan. But it's amazing that in those mountains in the Great Basin, temples have sprung up to dot the land all over the place.
And then, on a similar theme, the metaphor with a mountain, it's a place where you go. The manual calls it, and quotes from 2 Nephi, it calls it a place of refuge, and encourages us to go up into the mountains as well. And sometimes that is in the temple, but I think it can be in our literal temples and outside of the temple as well. Places where we go to be, undistracted by the rest of life, and whether that's if you don't have a nice temple to go to nearby, you can do that in your own homes if you create the right kind of environment. But that kind of distancing is important to draw close to God.
Amen.
So we get these temples that are raised up, and on a similar theme, the next big message in the writings of Isaiah that Nephi chooses is that the Lord will raise an ensign and gather Israel. So an ensign, of course, is a banner or a flag, and the name of the U.S. Church Magazine, and it's designed to call people. We have the standard in Moroni, Captain Moroni. Later in the Book of Mormon, will hold up a standard, a banner, and he'll call everybody to it. So the restored gospel is the banner that Isaiah is referring to, and he sees all nations flowing unto it. And now our missionaries are doing that. And it's really pretty amazing to see people from all different cultures, all over the world, be drawn to, without really having to abandon their culture and who they are, be drawn to this message that is for all of humanity, right? And to have Isaiah see that happen at a time where their God was the God of Israel, and that was strongly contrasted by the gods of other places. He saw all of humanity coming together under one gospel, and that was led by his God. And just think about what a miraculous vision that was for him, and now we get to partake in it and participate in it. It's pretty incredible.
Absolutely is. In the last bit, of course, we talk about the fact that Isaiah and Nephi testify of Christ's redeeming power, and there's plenty to talk about in here all throughout 2 Nephi. This is mentioned in numerous places, of course. But what I want to encourage people to do, scan 2 Nephi chapter 25, verses 19 through 30. Do this in preparation, even if you like. That'd be great. And look for things about Nephi's testimony. What impresses you about Nephi's testimony in those passages? And then, I think we should ask ourselves, like it says right here, how can we, like Nephi, labor diligently to persuade our children to believe in Christ? Later on, of course, Nephi also teaches during some of these verses that it is by grace that we are saved after all we can do. One of my favorite aspects of the gospel, because it's so funny how much our evangelical and other Christian brethren butt heads with us as if we don't believe in the concept of grace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we very much do. It's just like I will see even like ex-Mormons and stuff talk about like, no, I'm saved through grace because I am nothing and I'm nothing without God, and it's only through Christ that I'm able to be saved. And they say these things as if we're supposed to be like, well, no.
Yeah,
I agree completely. I
look at the
truth.
I look at that version of things that doesn't really require us to do our part, and I think, well, what is the grand scheme there? Like, what eventually we have to become something, and the fact that God's grace motivates us to do that is pretty fabulous.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole point of it. God's grace makes that up, but I don't even understand what the point of our existence would be if nothing, if it was all over said and done and we're saved and that's that, regardless of what we do on this earth.
And maybe that message of growth is what's drawing people in from all over the world, flocking to that ensign, right?
Yeah, I would have less incentive if I felt like it didn't matter. I'd be a drunk, lecherous fiend, who knows?
A merrymaker.
Yeah, I would be a merrymaker and a wine bibber. And so lots of good stuff in Isaiah. Bill, do you have anything else to add to the Isaiah world?
No, sir. Just read it. It's great stuff.
It is good stuff. So we hope you've enjoyed lesson number 9. Thanks for listening to Sunday School Bonanza. Find us, of course, at thisweekinmormons.com. I love saying all these things every time. Facebook /ThisWeekInMormons. Contact at thisweekinmormons.com. Twitter at @TheRealTwim is our Twitter account. We love to hear from you. Bill, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
As always, a joy to have you. And thanks for listening to Sunday School Bonanza, brought to you by This Week in Mormons, and we will talk to you soon.